Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Thursday evening. It is the day before the Premier League season begins. The 2023-2024 Premier League season gets underway for Sean Dyche's Everton side on Saturday afternoon at Goodison Park against Fulham. 3 o'clock kickoff. Sean Dyche has had his pre-game press conference today ahead of this one, and we will be bringing our live game preview ahead of this game tomorrow afternoon. But before we do that, we're going to sit down and preview the season in its entirety, what our expectations are for the upcoming Premier League season, how I feel Everton's pre-season has gone and the preparation for this season coming up, as well as talking about, obviously, the additions to the squad in the pre-season weeks, obviously going into a really, really important season for Everton Football Club. One thing I would say about this season coming up is it's very possible that this could be our last full season at Goodison Park. There is a lot of discussion at the moment surrounding the new stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock and when Everton will move into that new stadium. And whilst there has been quite a fair bit of discussion as to state that Everton will not be in the stadium for the first game of the season after next, aka the season after this one, that it is a very big possibility that Everton will move into the stadium during that season, meaning of course that this season will be the final full season at Goodison Park. If that is to be the case, that hasn't been confirmed, so it mightn't be the case. We might be in Goodison Park for the entirety of next season as well. However, there is a possibility at this point that this could be our last full season at Goodison, so we want to make it a good one, or at least one that isn't anywhere near as stressful or as anxious or as frustrating as the last two have been. Obviously, the word expectation doesn't really fit in the same sentence as the words Everton Football Club. So whenever I've been asked over the last couple of weeks what my expectation is for this upcoming season, where do I think Everton will finish, what do I hope Everton do over the next 9 months of the Premier League season, I always think it's very difficult to answer that question because I don't really have an expectation with Everton, because I think the more you expect something with Everton, the least likely it is to happen, and the less you expect something, the more likely it is to happen. What I think I will say is, obviously, the hope for me is that we are nowhere near that relegation battle. Obviously, the hope for me is that we win the league, by 20 points. We're absolutely brilliant. We win the FA Cup, we win the Carabao Cup as well, and everything is just absolutely perfect. But that isn't going to happen. So realistically, the hope for me is that we aren't anywhere near that relegation battle. We aren't having to look over our shoulder in March, April and May, and we aren't in a position where everybody is massively stressed and massively anxious going into those last couple of months of the season. Can I realistically see that happening? I can. I think there's a lot of sides in the Premier League this season that will struggle. Obviously, you've got the three that have been promoted: Luton, Sheffield United, and of course Burnley. I think Luton will struggle to really sort of establish themselves in the division. I think they'll do well at home, and I think they'll pick up some probably surprising results, but I think generally they will struggle to keep that up for an entire season. They just don't seem to have the infrastructure on and off the pitch to be able to deal with Premier League football, and I don't know whether Luton will look at this as an opportunity to sort of build a little bit and maybe build to a point where if they do go down, they're in a position to come right back up the season after. I think it's the same with Sheffield United. Again, Sheffield United's transfer business in this window has baffled me massively. They've sold their best player, and arguably one of the best players that they've had in recent years. They've sold one of their better midfielders today to Burnley, who are a direct relegation rival, and they seem to be in a really, really perilous financial position. Sheffield United, and obviously they're not the only ones in that type of position. Wolves in a similar position. Everton, of course, have been in a similar position, but they seem to be in a position of sort of preparing themselves for relegation before the ball is even being kicked. I think Sheffield United, again, similar to Luton, I think they'll be preparing to build themselves a foundation and build themselves a squad that will likely go down, but will maybe be good enough to come back up the season after, using obviously that parachute payment that they will get if they are relegated. I also don't think Burnley are as sort of away from it as some people seem to think they are. Don't get me wrong, Burnley had an amazing season last season. They obviously have transformed the way in which they play with Vincent Kompany there as the manager. It's a completely different Burnley side now to, you know, the ones that we saw years previous under the likes of Sean Dyche and previous managers. However, I think the sort of the general feeling I'm getting from the majority of football fans that seem to just think Burnley are going to turn up, blather everybody and be absolutely sound and finish in the top 10 is a little bit confusing to me. Whilst I think they are in a better position than the other two promoted clubs to stay in the division, and whilst I think there's quite a high chance that they do stay in the Premier League because of the other teams that are around that position, I don't think it's as simple and it's as straightforward as some people seem to think it is. There's a misconception that because Burnley had a fantastic season last season in the Championship that they will automatically be able to translate that into Premier League football, and that just simply isn't the case. We've seen numerous teams over the years who have gone down to the Championship, absolutely blathered it, won it comfortably, and then come back up to the Premier League and struggled. Leeds did it a few years ago. They absolutely walked the Championship, and then they come back to the Premier League and they'd struggled. You know, after a season in the Premier League, they were in a relegation battle, and then obviously the season following, they ended up getting relegated. We've seen Norwich do it numerous times where they've absolutely walked the Championship and they've been promoted and then they've been relegated the same year because they just haven't been able to cope. Again, I'm not saying Burnley will go down, and I'm not saying Burnley, are not good enough to stay in the division, but I just think it's a little bit. It's a bit confusing to me that people have just seem to have this just, gut feeling or confident feeling that Burnley will be absolutely sound and that they've got nothing to worry about, when I don't quite think it's as easy as that. You also then have got sides that were in and around the battle last season, Everton being one of them, Forest of course, West Ham United have lost a big part of their team in Declan Rice, could be about to lose another one in Lucas Paqueta. Nottingham Forest, I think, will struggle this season again as they did last season. Obviously, you've got Wolves, who are in an absolute state at the moment. They've just lost their manager. Is Gary O'Neill good enough to be able to come in and keep them, keep them above the sort of the drop for the entirety of the season? Bournemouth, I don't think will be as comfortable as they were last season. You've obviously got teams like Fulham, who I think will struggle this season, second season syndrome. Coming from an Evertonian, Marco Silva's second seasons aren't particularly great, as we have experienced. So there is, again, I think 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9 teams that you could make a case for that could potentially struggle this season in the Premier League, and Everton certainly are one of those teams. Now, my hope for this season is that we get to March time, April time, May time, and Everton aren't stressing. We aren't going to bed and having sleepless nights. We aren't waking up feeling like we're going to get relegated. We were in a position last season, the season just gone, where in January there were something like 8 and 9 teams that were separated by something like 6 points or something like that, and it was very possible that any 3 of those 8 or 9 teams could go down. And then what we started to see in February time and then moving into March time was 2 or 3 of those teams each week would sort of win their game whilst the other teams wouldn't, and they would sort of create that gap between themselves and the sides at the bottom. Teams like Crystal Palace did it, teams like Wolves did it last season, Bournemouth done it. They got to a point where, going into February, into March, the start of April, they were starting to create a bigger gap, and it went from 9 teams potentially going down to 6 teams, and then it went to 5 teams, and then it went obviously to sort of 4 teams in the in the last week of the season. I would hope, well, firstly, I would hope that Everton wouldn't be one of those 9 teams anyway, but that would generally mean that Everton would have to be finishing in the sort of top end of the Premier League table, the top 10 of the Premier League, and I'm not too sure that is a very realistic aim, given there's a lot of sides sort of in the Premier League this season that could finish in that sort of top 10, and there's a lot of teams that could finish in that bottom 10 as well. That sounds like an obvious statement, but what I mean is you've got Villa, you've got Brighton, you've obviously got Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham. There's 8 teams there that will almost certainly finish in the top 8, and therefore it would be difficult to break into that. And then, as I said, you've got Forest, Luton, Sheffield United, Everton, Wolves, Bournemouth, I've already said Nottingham Forest, haven't I? West Ham, Palace, again, 8 teams that could struggle this season. So Fulham, another one. Bournemouth, another one. So I do feel like it is going to be another one of those seasons where it's not going to be split into 3. I don't think it's going to be the top teams, the middle teams, and the bottom teams. I think it's going to be the top 10 teams, any of whom could finish. I think whoever's in 9th in April could potentially finish in 6th come the end of the season. And I also think we might be at a point where whoever's in 12th come March is still in a chance of being relegated, with a chance of being relegated. So having said that, and basing off the fact that would be, similar to last season, I would like to hope that Everton are one of those sides that in February, early March time, we're not looking over our shoulder. We've pulled away because we've won a couple of games at Goodison and we've picked up a couple of decent results here and there, and all of a sudden we're not needing to look over our shoulder because we've pulled away from the rest of the sides that are in and around that battle. I think that's the realistic aim for Everton. Like I said, I don't think it's very realistic to sit here and say, I think Everton will be finishing in the top 10 this season. I don't think it's very realistic to sit here and say Everton should be pushing for those European places, but I do think it's realistic to say we should be at a point where we're not looking over our shoulder come, March, April, May. We're at a point where we've created a gap between us and those sides that are likely to be relegated in those months, and that ultimately would be an improvement on what we've seen in recent years, because A, it would mean that we weren't going down to the last week of the season within a chance of getting relegated, and B, it would mean that we got to the last couple of months of the season without anything really to worry about. Now, how likely is that to happen? Well, hopefully, very likely. I think the manager will have a big say in that. I don't think we'll see a lot of exciting football this season. I don't think we'll see many 3, 4, 5-0 victories. I think we'll see a lot of 1-0 games. Now, whether that's Everton winning 1-0 or Everton losing 1-0, I think we'll see a lot of 1-0 games. I think we'll see a lot of draws, and by that I mean 1-1 draws or 2-2 draws, 0-0 draws, etc., etc. I don't think we're in for a particularly exciting season in terms of the football on the pitch. I don't think we're in for a particularly free-flowing goal-scoring season. And I'm not just saying that because of Sean Dyche, and because there's a sort of generalisation that Sean Dyche's teams aren't capable of scoring goals and aren't capable of putting performances in like that. I'm saying it because I just don't feel like Everton are in a position to be able to do that. And I think Everton's best bet at the moment is to be hard to beat, defensively resolute, and take a chance when we get it. Because I don't think, and even though we're in the market for more attacking players, and even though we've brought a couple of attacking players in already, or certainly, over the next 24 hours, it seems like Yusuf Chamiti's move will be completed, so that will be another attacking player. Even though that is the case, I still don't think we're going to be in a position where we're creating 8, 9, 10 clear-cut chances in a game and scoring 4 or 5. We might have one game where that happens, like the Brighton game towards the back end of last season, but I think the majority of our performances will be hard to beat, defensively strong, resolute, and nicking a goal when we get a chance. I think that's how the opening game against Fulham will go on Saturday, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I think Everton will win that game 1-0, because I think we'll get an opportunity, we'll take it, and then defensively we'll be very resolute for the rest of the game. And I would take that absolutely, by the way, just for the sake of the prediction, I would take that all day long. If we have a look at Everton's pre-season, of course, we've played a number of games. First one, beating Stade Lyonnais 2-1 away from home. We then obviously beat Wigan 1-0 the following Saturday. Drew 0-0 with Bolton, beat Stoke 1-0, and obviously beat Sporting 1-0 as well, with a draw to AC Monza in the middle of that. Obviously, that behind closed doors game at Goodison Park. Again, an unbeaten run in pre-season. Not many goals conceded. Obviously, only the 2 goals against Monza and the 1 goal against Stade Lyonnais conceded in the entirety of pre-season. We have looked defensively resolute again in those pre-season games that we've all watched and we've all been there for, and a lot of us will have been there live to watch those games in person. I certainly can speak for the game against Wigan. I was there. It wasn't a particularly exciting performance. It wasn't a performance that was particularly enthusiastic or made me sit there and think, wow, we are going to be unbelievable this season. But we were hard to beat, we were resolute, we defended well, and we took the chance when it come to us. Now, granted, you could say, yeah, Cam, but that was against a Championship side, a League One side. It's going to be much more difficult in the Prem. It is, and that's why there's such an emphasis on Everton improving this squad and going and bringing in players. We're on the verge of signing Yusuf Chimiti by the sounds of things. We've obviously been linked heavily with Ekatike from PSG. We've obviously been linked heavily with Wilfred Gnonto over the last 24 hours as well. I expect Everton to do a significant more amount of business over the next 3 weeks than we have done in the previous 6. I do, whilst we might be, previewing the season now, and it might look like, well, we haven't really made much movement in the transfer window. I don't think that will be the case come the end of the Premier League, come the end of the transfer window. I think we'll be looking at a much different Everton side, a much stronger Everton side with many more attacking options in it. Having said that, the 2 signings that we have made, pardon me, already in this transfer window, in Ashley Young and Arnaud Danjuma, obviously, as of recording this live stream, we haven't officially announced Yusuf Chimiti, although he looks like he is coming in. Again, I'm not particularly disappointed with the 2 players we've brought in so far. I think Ashley Young is a very astute signing. I think Ashley Young is somebody that comes in and brings experience, brings a cool, calm head, brings that leadership, brings that versatility as well. Okay, he's a 38-year-old player, etc., etc., but he's a 38-year-old player that played an awful lot of Premier League football last season and was able to play at a really, really high level for a team that ended up finishing in a European position. Granted, will he do that this season? We don't know. We'll wait and see. But he certainly brings character, he certainly brings personality, and he certainly brings leadership into this team, that of which we lost in the players we lost this season. We lost character in Yerry Mina leaving the football club. We lost leadership in Conor Cody leaving the football club. So to bring somebody in like Ashley Young on a free, although on the face of it, as we said at the time, it mightn't seem like an exciting signing and it mightn't be one that you're jumping around and you're celebrating, it's certainly one that makes a lot of sense in terms of his experience, the personality, the character, and obviously his versatility on the pitch as well. He's not just coming into the football club for what he brings off the pitch, he's coming into the football club for what he can bring on the pitch, and what he can bring on the pitch is the ability to play left back, the ability to play left midfield, the ability to play left wing, the ability to fit in at right back if need be, and wherever else the manager wants him. He's already said he'll be able to fit in. So again, mightn't be an exciting signing, but one that I think is necessary for where we are at the moment. And then Arnaud Danjuma, again, seen very little of him so far. We've only seen him for 45 minutes. He did pick up a slight injury. The hope is that he will be fit and available for Saturday's game against Fulham. The manager wasn't asked about that, but as I said, the hope generally is that he will be ready for that game. Again, a smart signing coming in on loan. Obviously improves our attacking area, obviously improves our attacking options. He can come in, he's proven he can score goals, he's proven he can get assists, he's proven he can be involved in goals in the Premier League and at the top level in other countries as well. So hopefully he can do that. I'm sure he's got a point to prove. I'm sure he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder given what happened in January, and I'm sure he is ready to prove to us Evertonians that he wants to be a part of this team and that he's good enough to be a part of this team. As I said, Yusuf Chimiti looks to be through the door as well, which is a good one. Whether or not he will have any involvement on Saturday, we'll have to wait and see. But again, it's certainly a positive move and the right type of player and the type of player Everton should be going for. And yet, generally, as I said, in terms of pre-season, whilst the games and the performances have not necessarily been particularly exciting, and whilst they've not necessarily been particularly, enthusiastic and brilliant to watch, what they have been is resolute, hard to beat performances. And I think, as I said, I think that's what we're going to get from Everton this season. I don't think we're going to get many unbelievable, games of football where it's fantastic to watch and we're brilliant and we're exciting and we're this and we're that, with the other. I just don't think you're going to get that this season. I really don't. And ultimately, I think we're going to have to settle for a season of, whilst it mightn't be pretty and whilst it mightn't be exciting football, what it will be is resolute. What it will be is results based, and what it will be is hard working. And I think that's something that Sean Dyche has focused a lot on in pre-season, and these players have clearly focused a lot on in pre-season, is fitness, is getting those fitness levels up. We mightn't be the best team in the Premier League, we mightn't have the best players in the Premier League, but Sean Dyche certainly wants to ensure that we're the fittest team in the Premier League. And if we, whilst we might be beaten for quality or for ability on the ball, I think the manager wants to ensure that we're not beaten for fitness, and we're not beaten for effort, and we're not beaten for stamina in a game. So I think that's been the clear aim, and that's why the performances haven't necessarily been brilliant, and that's why the football hasn't necessarily been brilliant. But the fitness levels clearly now are much better than they ever were under Frank Lampard, or that they ever were at any point last season. And I think that will help Everton. I think that will help Everton in the opening couple of weeks of the season when other teams aren't necessarily as fit, and I think it will help Everton as the season goes on as well, when teams start to tire and certain players start to tire. Pardon me. Ultimately, for me, the aim for this season, the main aim for this season, obviously it goes without saying, is to avoid relegation again. Because we've been so close in the last 2 seasons, we've flirted with it in the last couple of seasons, that it would be silly for me to sit here and say the aim is anything other than to avoid relegation. Obviously, it's a possibility. For me, the aim and the expectation shouldn't just be to avoid relegation. It should be to comfortably avoid relegation. Like I said, it should be to be in a position in March, April, May time where we're not going to bed sort of thinking, oh my God, we could be relegated there, and we're not leaving Goodison thinking we needed to win that game, and we're going to have to go and watch Forest, now, or we're going to have to go and watch Luton now to make sure that they lose. We want to be in a position where we're comfortable. And in those last couple of months of the season, we've got nothing to worry about, and we're safe. And, whilst that might be boring, and whilst we might have nothing to play for, at the very, very least, we've got nothing to worry about. I'd love to sit here and say, and we'd love, we want to have a good cup run, and we want to do well in the cups, etc., etc. But if I'm being honest, whilst I obviously wouldn't say no to a good cup run, of course I wouldn't. And whilst I would love Everton to go and, get to an FA Cup final or a Carabao Cup final, the priority for me is focus on the league and ultimately focus on staying in the division and staying in the division comfortably. And if we have to do that by winning games 1-0 and them not being very exciting, then so be it. That's what we've got to do, and I think that generally will be how the season goes. I do. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. Just thought I'd do a little video to discuss the upcoming season. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave a like. We will be back tomorrow with the game preview to that opening game against Fulham, so don't forget to look out for that one. And we will, of course, have a video discussing Yusuf Chimiti's move once it is completed and confirmed. But big thank you all for watching. Please do leave a like if you have enjoyed this one. Subscribe if you are new, and we'll see you later.